Hi, it's Carl here. Just wanted to do something different today and just sort of share my experiences around actually constructing my garden. A little bit off the topic of maples and stuff themselves, but obviously creating a garden that's suitable for the maples to do well in was a big consideration for me. So the first slide we're on now is my house as of about 2.5 years ago, maybe a bit more. Well, it had been like that since we moved in 7 years ago, to be honest. So just a slope with some grass on it. Not very interesting. And I kind of worked out, looking YouTube videos through the internet, Google searches, that the kind of gardens I like really had split levels. I always sort of wanted to create that effect. So to take that in hand, what I did was, first of all, strangely enough, prepare the front garden. So decided to get this tarmacked over. Looked at various ways of doing it. Could you use block paving, chippings, etc. But then just walking and looking round about, tarmac seems to be really durable, lasts for a very long time. And I've still, as you'll see, got some block paving around the edges, so it gives it a bit of character. I also left some planting in the far end, as you look at the picture there, just so it wasn't completely tarmacked, and there's some opportunity to plant something nice and give it a bit of character, stop it looking like one big car park really. So I had that done professionally by a local company. They did a great job, and it's standing the test of time really well. So the reason I did that first is it gave me the opportunity to park the cars on there, free up the side of the house to move the earth, which I'll show you in a second. And that's how I kind of planned it. So that was stage one. Stage two was to move this fence. So if you imagine, that fence ran level with the wall on the right hand side. So I've kind of just taken the same fence, got some new posts, moved it back basically. That gave me the opportunity to lose a sort of metre run there by the side of the drive, which wasn't really doing much good, and gain that extra metre onto the garden. This meant when the conservatory went on the back of the house, there's a metre gap between the conservatory windows and that fence from the inside, which is a lot better because we're not just sort of staring at a fence, and we can put some plants down there and stuff like that. So that was the option there. Moving on to the actual kind of excavation of the site really. First thing to say is the mini digger was invaluable. The amount of earth that came out of what I thought would be not too big a job was exceptional. It was probably 3 to 4 times as much as naively I thought. But from experience now, I know that kind of every time 1 scoop of earth you remove, it sort of lands up as 3 or something, because it's very compacted. It was very clayey soil, but when you actually pile it up, it takes up a huge amount of room. The other thing to note as well is the fact that because it's clay, and because I did this in March 2 years ago, then the result there is it weighs an awful lot. So as I'll show you later, when it comes to having it removed, you've got to be kind of aware of that with weight limits and such, but we'll come back to that one. But it was kind of a big surprise just how much work that was. That's the outline of what is now the garden. I just an idea I had in my mind, looking at sort of again, YouTube invaluable. In fact, most of what I have done overall is looking at YouTube and doing the odd Google search. It's amazing how much information is out there. I grew up in an era where if you wanted information, you went to the library and got a book on it. Now we have this facility to use the internet, use videos. I like videos. I think I like to see what I'm aiming for, if you know what I mean. And that works really well for me. What you might note in the bottom right hand corner, just about to see, is a big rolled up piece of plastic tubing, and that's forming part of the French drain to drain off the upper level. So we'll come back to that point, but that is the tubing that was used. So this was the absolute mess down the side of my house, and there's a lot more went on top of that. That was all the earth, really just extracting the grass and a bit of soil below it to clear the site. I would say we had double that, and then that all over again. So it took 2 grabber lorries to take that away. Part of that problem again is because the grabber lorry has a weight limit. So because it was very soggy, they explained to me that even though they could fit more in the lorry, it weighs an absolute ton. So that was a big factor. Just to share the knowledge there that using skips for this is woefully inadequate. You'd have had to have had, I don't know, 10 skips or something at some huge expense. It's much better to get someone with a lorry and just pick it up and grab it and go, really. I'd say for the price of 1 skip you can get 3 or 4 removed in that sense, so that worked really well. But it was just a case of having the space to do it. Note there, again, little learning, I've got some boards, some pallets, whatever, really just alongside there, just to protect the bricks on the house, which worked fine, doesn't need to be fancy. But it certainly did a job. It also gave a bit of protection when the grabber lorry came with the big grabber thing, so it didn't impact on the wall. It just they're very skillful. They got it cleared supremely well. But yeah, a big job definitely. So the next side, those of you who see my garden would be familiar probably with the dividing wall. The problem I've, again from experience, is that walls tend over time to lean or collapse or just look pretty bad, really. So I can't bricklay. I'm not very skillful like that at all. So decided to use timbers. These are sort of 2.4 metre timbers. And what you can see on the left hand side there is what I discovered, again looking on YouTube, article Dead Men. So they are buried into the ground in that way. The ground's then piled on top, which means that the wall can't move outwards because it's kind of anchored by those, nor can it tilt really because the weight of the earth on top of those is forcing them down and keeping everything in place. So that's worked so far supremely well. You notice that just by the wall on the left hand side, there's a sort of, it goes all the way down to the bottom. That's where that plastic tubing went. It's just tubing with holes in it really, but because I put plastic UP damp-proof membrane, or plastic sheeting really, up against the wood to help protect and preserve it, and sort of to stop water running through the wall, if that makes sense. That barrier's there, but obviously you'd get a terrible pooling of water in the top part if it rained heavily. So what happens is that above where that trench is, just behind the wall, again plastic tube in there, on top of that it's just pure pebbles, so any water from the top runs into the pebbles, down to the tube, and is carried away to the bottom of the garden. So that tube runs up the side by the conservatory, all the way along as you see it, and then down to the left, there's an access kind of roady thing at the back, which is fine, so it just drains the water off onto that. And there we can see the result. That's what it looks like. You've just got these sort of deadhead bits pointing outwards there, but again they've worked really well. Well worth investing in a bit extra wood to do that with, I think. And so far the wood stood up to the test of time. Of course it's treated, it's proper wood to do the job, but that's worked very well. In the next slide you can see the conservatory being delivered. So surprisingly perhaps, that the conservatory I have wasn't built by professionals, it's a self-build. So that was delivered on the very last day before the first lockdown. So very fortunate to get that actually. I think it was about sort of the end of March, but really lucky to have it, because any later I wouldn't have had that facility. And then because we were locked down, I was furloughed from work, so I had a chance to build things. So it a very, very sad and difficult time worked out in that sense well, because I got the time to crack on with the project. So the base of the conservatory is not in fact bricks. As I said, I can't bricklay, so this was a kind of, you pay more for the base here, but you don't have to pay all the labour charges of somebody coming to build it. So I think it's kind of swings and roundabouts. But as you see, that metal framework is bolted to the house wall with coach bolts, so it's really secure. And then all we had to do is dig 8 holes, fill them with a couple of blocks. That saved a lot of concrete really, didn't use a cement mixer. And then round that I poured quickset concrete to set the whole thing in place. And it's been fine. You can just about see there's legs on the bottom of the frame. They were really handy to level everything. So again, without much skill, but with the spirit level, we could do a really good job. There's my daughter's boyfriend, so that's worked quite well. Both my daughter's boyfriends are kind of tradesmen, so that worked very much in my favour. So having levelled it, got the floor just screwed on top there. The walls are in fact steel boxes, so what appears to be brickwork from the outside, and it's a perfect illusion, are in fact kind of brick tiles. So as you can see, that's how it ships, and they provide enough tiles just to cover in the gaps where the panels, the boxes meet really. So again, very, very effective, to be honest with you. And it did make the internal wiring a lot easier because they're just hollow boxes, so you can run cabling through for sockets, etc. So a very good system actually. So there's the garden sort of coming together now. The basics of it is you just get the ground reasonably level, lay landscape fabric down, which is sort of impermeable to, it won't let weeds through, and cover it with chippings. There's about 7 ton bags of chippings on that lot, so it's quite considerable. And actually now it's all settled, I could probably do one more just to kind of top it up a little bit really. But I just like the effect, and I know what I'm like. I know from experience, I get very enthusiastic about projects, but running, like the ongoing maintenance of things can sometimes be a bit of strain. So this is the super low maintenance. Weeds just don't grow on that really. You get a few little ones that you can just easily pull out, or maybe around the edges of things, but super low maintenance, gives me time to to concentrate on those maples really. That's a view from the end of the garden, sort of nearly complete. You can tell there it's a while ago. I don't have the solar panels on there as yet. And that's a view from inside the conservatory. So inside I just use hardboard to cover the inside of the boxes, and that's kind of a stick-on material with a brick effect, so it's actually almost like wallpaper almost. But again, I think you'd agree it's pretty effective really. One thing I'd share from my experience as well is that it does have a glass roof. I had a polycarbonate roof before and kind of hated it. It lets all the heat out. It's incredibly noisy if it rains. It goes green, it goes mouldy. I get it. It's affordable, and of course if that's all you can have, that's fine. But the glass roof is so much better, and it's also got self-cleaning glass on it, so when it rains it kind of looks after itself. But so glad I sort of waited out for that and paid the extra money really to get what I think is a better result. So from there, that's the start of my little collection of aces really. As you can see, very early days. There's a Sangu Kaku there and a Baihu, but that's how we start. Actually, just another bit of experience there. But buy them out of leaf. I mean, why not? 1 or 2 I did mail order. I wouldn't do that. I found better places I've discussed now really. But if you mail order things out of leaf, there's not a lot to get damaged. They don't dry out really because they're kind of dormant. Whereas some of the ones I had that mail ordered that had leafed out, they're the ones that had problems. They're the ones that looked a bit bashed around a bit. So not so saleable to the garden centres or the mail order people. But why not? Those plants are going to be there for the rest of your life probably. So why not pick something that's out of leaf? And I kind of liked it as well because it meant that the first spring, you didn't really know what you'd bought. It was quite exciting to see how they'd turn out, I suppose. So that's again another little tip really. Just note as well, before I forget, the pebbles form a very good base to these pots. Everything I've got is potted pretty much. Because if you stand them on pebbles, there's natural drainage there. You never really want to put a pot in a tray, or even if it was just on clay soil, they'd kind of dig themselves in, and the clay's not that permeable, so it's going to sort of waterlog the pot really. So I've got kind of a drainage all over the garden, which is kind of a nice side effect. So I have moved things around, of course, but that was the kind of how it looked when it was first-ish done, I suppose, really. And that's what it kind of looks at now. So a lot more plants, of course, as I've collected, grown a great deal, and the little archway, the ornaments, you can sort of start to accentuate things, but getting the basic format of the garden was critical. This is not spring this year, spring the year before, but worried about the younger trees getting frost damage and all the rest of it. So I brought them indoors, basically. It's almost quite comical. It's almost a forest of trees. The learning I'd share there is, though, that if you do this and you protect them, that's great, but then they will leaf out. You've almost enhanced that process because they are out of the cold. It's kind of warm in there during the day. So it's a conservatory, so it's fine, so it's cool at night, etc. So it's almost like the outside world, but they're so protected they will leaf out, so then you lose the option of putting them out until the last frosts have definitely gone. So just bear that in mind. If you start protecting the trees, you'll probably encourage them to progress, and then once they've done that, you kind of in that it's a one-way street almost. So also I did some solar lighting. I've done a video on that. Again, if you buy really cheap solar lights, I think they're really disappointing. The ones I've got a really good big panel on them, and they do a great job. So that makes it enjoyable at night, which is fantastic. The lights I've got also you can change the colour of, so you can have a play and see what works for you. Problem with the garden though is that I hadn't got any shade. It's a completely south-facing garden, so the next thing I constructed was that kind of the year afterwards. And clearly, without shade, the aces were getting damaged. There's problems there on some of them. I didn't know at that point, which ones to favour, and hadn't got that experience to kind of work out where to put what really. But shade was definitely the order of the day. So I constructed this sort of pergola thing with a bamboo roof. Mistake I made really is I should have varnished the bamboo to keep it sort of looking better, I suppose, but I didn't. Silly mistake, but there we go. But that's been quite successful. It's a bit of shade for people as well, as you see with the deck chairs there. But if you have a south-facing garden, if there's no shade, well, I'll make some. I mean, eventually some of the trees might get so big that I can use that as shade, which I certainly will do. But because when you're starting out, everything's small and the same size, there's not much you can do there really. That's just a shot of the construction. So I used fairly thin wood, but sort of backed it up with sort of pieces at 90 degrees and put some cross members in, so it's worked out pretty well. And now, that's a shot from earlier today really, so certainly been really useful. I constructed a little bench on the back there out of some decking and sort of cut it and made it look a bit Japanesey and stained it. So it's working okay, and then that climbing plant will enhance the front there as well. Added a little bit of lighting underneath to, again, summer evenings, why not enjoy your plants and a bit of the outdoors really. And those main lights were already on there actually. I thought I'd need to move them underneath the canopy, but I kind of like the way it shines through the bamboo and creates a sort of diffuse light effect really. So kind of enjoy that on some of the quite rare in the UK warm evenings that we do get. Also for the front garden made these planters, so again, guess what, YouTube video, how to make a planter sort of thing. They're all made out of the same size wood to keep it really easy. The top's just turned over so it sort of sticks out and it's flatter. Inside that, around the edges, you've got a damp-proof membrane, plastic sheeting basically, and on the bottom the membrane, the gardening membrane that I used under the pebbles. And that's fine because everything drains through, but it will stop weeds growing up really, so that's worked out really well. That's covering a drain, so that seemed like a good way that there's access to a drain. It could be moved if we needed to, but rather than this sort of great big drain cover, thought that'd look a bit better. And that's me just offering things up actually at that point to see what worked. I never did put that tree there, but it's good to sort of plan things out. Again, pots are great, you can move things around. And I also did that in front of the window. There's basically cement under there when I think it's going to grow. It's only a very thin layer of pebbles actually. So the answer for me was to create a trough in a similar way, protect the wood, stain it black obviously, and use the damp-proof membrane on the inside. But that's done okay. So the net result at the front of the house was kind of this really, which I'm really happy with. I mean, I could do more, I could whatever, but I have planted most of the plants, as you see, on the side of the house in the ground. In fact, they're all in the ground. Reason being, I don't want to be out the front watering everything. One thing I've changed is I've taken the conifers that are in pots, as you can see on the front there, and put them in the back. They just suck up water so fast that I was just having to water them every single day. And it's quite windy at the front as well, so if we talked about evaporation, has its effect. So moving those to the back has made life a lot easier for me. But the big troughs are so big that they'll hold water for a good few days really, and probably last between showers, so that's working much better. So that's the kind of side of the house as was, and that's as it is now. So again, flicking between the two, you can see quite a difference. And again, a little learning, it's tempting to sort of overplant and put too much together, but I think those plants will reach a really good size in the end, and it was just a way of maintaining. You have to be patient, you have to wait, and then things will grow and obviously fill in. So that's kind of most of the journey really. And just to finish, this is a little plant that I bought 2 years ago from the Japanese garden in Cornwall, Little Princess. And it's just good to, great tip again, photograph your plants, like your kids and whatever, they grow, you don't realise how fast they're growing and things change. So to be honest, a big incentive for me to do these videos, it was mainly for my own use really, to keep a memory and remember how big plants are, and to keep a record, I suppose. If other people are enjoying them, that's absolutely fantastic, and thanks for all the likes and the subscriptions especially. That's really nice to know that people are interested. But there's a Little Princess again from 2 years ago, little scrawny little thing, but a proper tree, and proper grafted tree nonetheless. And there she is now. But again, bear in mind this is a dwarf, it's not supposed to grow terribly fast, but just really pleased with the outcome there. So once again, thanks for all your support so far. If you do want to like and subscribe, that's all the better. That's not too much of a strange one for you, but if you're going to have a garden, you need to think about shade, you need to think about the basics first, I suppose, and everyone's going to be different, but with no overhanging trees, no natural sage, and a south-facing garden, that's where we are. Really glad for a south-facing garden in terms of the solar panels, obviously, because it's kind of pretty much perfect, I suppose. So I'm happy that it was easier to buy a south-facing house really and provide some shade than do it another way around. But overall, pleased so far. Always more work to do, but thanks for your support, and we'll see you in another video soon.